Right, despite being constantly told over and over again that we must stay in our aero bars at all costs for a triathlon or time trial, do you find yourself fighting that and actually constantly wanting to get out of them on the climbs?
Well, if so, you're certainly not alone because, well, we all know the aero benefits of being in the tri bars when we're on the flats, but what about on the climbs? And when do those aero benefits, well, simply go out of the window?
Well, today we're going to be taking a look into whether it is better or faster for you to stay in your aero bars on the climbs, or in fact, to just get out of them.
So the aero bars, well, they need little introduction. They do exactly what they say, make us more aero. They allow us to tilt forward on the bike, to rest our upper body on the aero bars and reduce that frontal area that we present to the wind. This makes a significant difference when we're on the flat. We all know that.
Yeah, but what happens when we hit a hill? Do we stay in our aero bars, or can we actually lay more power down out of the aero bars? But of course, that's going to increase our frontal area though. But then, does that even matter when we're on a climb? Well, this is the dilemma, so here's what we advise you do.
On a rolling course where we're carrying speed and there's not going to be any hills that kick up sharply or for long and dime, then we really should try and stay in our aero bars. And it is worth pointing out that drag from wind resistance is starting at 15k an hour speed, and from 20 kilometers an hour that increases exponentially. So anything above that speed, we really should be staying in our aero bars.
Yeah, and for a rolling course, it's likely that we're going to be holding speeds in excess of 15 kilometers per hour for a majority of the course, including some of the climbs. So it makes total sense to stay in those aero bars to really maximize those aerodynamic gains. But as the hills kick up or a little bit more sustained, well, that is where things get a little bit more confusing.
Now, from experience, being in the aero bars for anything that's long or sustained in distance just feels wrong to me. I don't feel comfortable. I definitely don't feel like I can produce the amount of power. But maybe this doesn't matter because I could be gaining more from those aerodynamic gains.
Well, to counter that, I actually remember Chris Froome going full aero in the Hilly time trial stage 18 at the Tour de France back in 2016, whilst a lot of his competitors didn't bother. They decided to ride road bikes, they didn't feel that aerodynamics was as important for those hills. Well, Chris went on to win that stage and he beat none other than Tom Dumoulin by 21 seconds, so he made it work. Now, I think this is calling for a bit of an investigation, Fraser.
Time to give it a go, Mark. Now, Mark has taken us to one of his favourite hills in the Bath area, of which there are a lot to choose from because, to be honest, it's pretty much the only way to get out of the city. And this is definitely one of your favourites, isn't it?
Bannerdown Hill.
Yeah, so we're just along the top of the road from Bannerdown. We're about to go down there shortly, tackle the middle section of the climb, approximately 8% in gradient, and actually some serious sections getting close to 20.
Now, the idea behind all of this is to see whether there's a difference in the effort that we're having to exert for those different positions. Now, I think it's going to be the heart rate that's really going to tell the story here, but it's also going to be really interesting to see what happens to the cadence as well. So, Fraser,
let's get going, huh?
Here we go. Okay then, run one, 400 watts. I'm in the aero bars.
Me in the hoods.
Time Let's go.
Yeah.
Tell you what, Fraser, that was tough.
Yeah, there wasn't anything easy about that, was there, Mark?
No, I mean, I just wanted to get out of my aero bars for the whole thing. Although I did notice at one point, I almost seemed to like pull away from you as it shallowed out.
You did, and that was the one point where I wanted to get into my aero bars because it was just that little bit less steep and it would have been good for me to be in them. But as you say, you were able to pull away, but I did notice that I caught quite quickly back up to you as it got steeper.
Yeah, I was just really struggling to put the power out as it got steeper. But yeah, we just need to get our breath back now, and then we'll go for run two and switch it around. Well, I am pleased that's all over and done with, and we are sat in the warmth now.
Sure.
And we can look at our results. So first of all, let's take a look at the times. And
For the first run, we went 3 minutes 35, the second run, 3 minutes 33. Basically the same, really. Yeah, so I'm going to say now, times are irrelevant. But what's going to be really interesting is looking at how our bodies responded to these intensities. So first of all, I was on the Aero Bars, Fraser was on the hoods, and I actually rode at 385 watts, so a little bit below the 400 watts, but simply because it was really hard to put the power out in the Aero Bars. I had a heart rate of 151 and a cadence of 83.
Yeah, so as Mark said, I was on the hoods for the first run. My power was up at 393 actually. It's a little bit higher than Mark, but I do weigh a little bit more than him, I'm not afraid to say. My heart rate sat at 156, but again, I'm not so surprised by that number, and my cadence was at 90.
Yeah, and then we switched it around, and this is where things obviously get interesting, because I was on the hoods and I rode at 396 watts, so really a lot closer to that 400 watts we were striving for. But my heart rate remained at around that 150 BPM mark, so that was interesting, and my cadence was at 84 RPM.
Yeah, and second run, I was riding Aero in the bars. My power dropped just a little bit, 390, but significantly, I found that really much harder to do, and that was evidenced by the fact that my heart rate spiked up to 162, which is a reasonably higher number. And that's purely because I was uncomfortable, didn't like to have to be stuck in that position. It's not the type of riding style I prefer to have on the climb. Pretty much unaffected cadence, just dropped down to 88.
Well, that's actually really interesting. We've kind of got two sides to the story there. So in my case, I actually had a difference in my power, but my heart rate remained the same. So it would suggest the hoods is actually easier. But for yourself, your power was pretty much the same.
Yeah.
Give 3 watts, but the heart rate was different and it was higher for the Aero Bars. So
It was, and that doesn't really surprise me, because personally I just much prefer to be out of the Aero Bars. I would probably be out of the saddle, be climbing with the bike side to side, I'd just be more comfortable in that position. So it really doesn't surprise me that the heart rate spiked up.
Yeah, and then finally, obviously we've mentioned the cadence already. There was so little difference in our cadence between each rep that, yeah, that's a non-factor really.
Sure.
Now, there is actually some increasing evidence from research that kind of backs all this up, and one in particular is from Medicordi, from the English Institute of Sport, or EIS, and they found that cyclists had a significantly lower critical power for the time trial position, so when they're in the Aero Bars. In addition, whilst in the time trial position, their performance decreased during each trial, and with that, decrease in power output with greater trial duration.
Sure, but how is this important? Well, in short, we do know that riding in the Aero Bars drastically improves our aerodynamics, but there might be a slight drop-off in power. Whilst riding at higher speeds, then the aerodynamics plays a huge part, but once that speed starts to drop, it isn't really such a big factor as opposed to perhaps the power output that we're actually putting out, right?
Yeah, so if our power is decreasing due to our position and being in the Aero Bars, then maybe it makes more sense to get out of those Aero Bars for certain climbs. And there's actually some more research that kind of goes along this trend that has been looking into the gradients and our aerodynamics. So as we mentioned earlier, aerodynamics becomes less of a factor below 15 kilometers per hour. And this, for elite cyclists or good cyclists, tends to be on a gradient of around 7.5%. Obviously, for a lot of other riders, you're non-elite good cyclists, then this is going to, the speeds are going to start dropping off at lower gradients, and this can be anywhere as low as 4.5%. And this is particularly important for us triathletes who are doing long distance events. We're going to be pacing the ride really well. We're not going to be hammering up every climb. So you're maybe going to be traveling at slower speeds up the climb. So yeah, it may make more sense to get out the Aero Bars because you're not going at a fast enough speed for those climbs.
Yeah, sure, Mark, but this doesn't mean that we're actually suggesting we should always be jumping out of your Aero Bars, because like we said, with rolling terrain, if you're on a slight incline and you can still hold that greater than 15k an hour pace, stick with it, stay in the position, because it is providing you with that aerodynamic benefit.
Yeah, and I guess that kind of answers my Chris Froome debate I picked up earlier, because I actually have the stats from his ride from the Tour de France here for that. So he did 17 kilometers in 30 minutes and 43 seconds. So that is an average speed of 33 kilometers per hour. And I'd imagine, given the length of the race, just 17 kilometers, he was going pretty hard on those climbs and probably wasn't allowing his speed to drop off too much. So aerodynamics would have been a big advantage to him on that day.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose what we can close on here is that it is really just practice, practice, and more practice specific to what you're going to be riding in your race. So whether that's a triathlon or TT specific bike or a road bike with some clip-on aero bars, you need to be comfortable in that aero position that you've got. So when you're riding into hills or slight inclines, stay in that aero bar position. See where your limit is with finding that speed that feels comfortable to you, and gauge how that works for that 15-kilometre limit that we've been talking about.
Yeah, and personally, I just really like it. It's a good excuse to get up out of the aero bars, stretch my back out mid-race, because we can be in the aero bars for an awfully long time during some triathlon races. Now, if you like the video today, do hit that thumbs up button. If you'd like to see more from GTN, you can just click on the globe and subscribe. And as always, do get involved in the comments section below. Let us know your thoughts on using the aero bars on climbs and your experiences in the past. And if you'd like to see some other videos, we've got one where I literally slammed the stem on my aero bars and went for a very aggressive position versus a very comfortable position. You can see my comfort versus aero video by clicking just here.
And if you want to see another video on how to ride in the aero bars, you can find that here.